Yeah, he didn't know he was looking for me. He would have told you so for a year and a half after we got together. So I thought I'd call today's talk relationship. Since it's Valentine's weekend. And, oh, I didn't know. I'm going to go out and buy a stuffed animal. I owe somebody a gift. But relationship, because I thought about relationship, and usually we think it's relationship with each other. We think it's relationship with personalities. And it that's part of it, but it's the least significant part of it. And if you want a more pleasant time with the relationship with personalities, well, it's got to start inside. It's got to start, what is your relationship to your spiritual life? You can use the word God. You can use the word truth, invisible presence. But what is your relationship to that thing that you know just is? Because I am convinced that there's not one person in this room who thinks it's all done on their own. Who thinks that you do it, that everything is done by yourself and then you just die and that's it. We all have some sort of a relationship, be it a peaceful one or a nasty one, with an invisible presence. There is something. Would you agree?
Yes.
There's something going on. And if you're the God of old, you may not care for that relationship and you've been searching for another one. So when I started my healing journey, I went in search of a new relationship with God because I didn't like the one that I knew. That God would send me to hell or I would get nothing for Christmas. Because that relationship was based on the thought that I was somehow bad. And that God wouldn't like me because I was somehow bad. Because I had done bad things. And I wasn't going to get well if I kept that relationship. So I had to find a God, or an understanding of a God, that could love me in spite of what I had done. Because I didn't want to continue to do those old things. But if I was always living under somebody mad at me, I wasn't going to succeed in getting well. And when I say well, I'm talking spiritually, mentally, and physically. To get well. And so I had to know that I still liked the word God. It still worked for me. I at that point, I didn't have a grasp on Jesus or Christ or what those words meant. But I had a relationship with the word God. What I did was transform the understanding of God. I went to talk to people who loved God, who didn't fear God. They weren't worried about what God was going to do to them or had done to them or had done to their neighbor. They had a quiet communion with the God of their understanding. And so I began to get down on my knees and pray because my mentors told me to get down on your knees and pray. I'd never done that my whole life. And I'm not telling you to do that unless you feel so called to do that. And I'll tell you, when I got down on my knees to pray, it wasn't to please a God out there. It wasn't for the satisfaction of God. When I got down on my knees, what I got was focus. I knew what I was there for. When I knelt beside my bed and I began to have a communication with God, and at that point it was still a fairly human God, but nevertheless, I knew it was an invisible something or someone that heard me, loved me, and wasn't worried for me. That was the best part. Wasn't worried for me. But I continued to talk to people whose relationship had evolved with this God of their understanding. But I wanted the ones who had understood a love of it, and a peace of it, and a joy of it, and didn't humanize it. I continued to talk to those people. And I began to say, in 12 steps, we have a third step prayer, which is my favorite prayer, and I don't think it's just for addicts at all. And this prayer says, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Now, I didn't have a clue what that prayer meant, but I memorized it, because I knew it was somehow true, and I knew that God knew what it meant. But I continued to look at it, and I thought, God, I offer myself to thee. Okay, well, fine. Here I am, God. Take me. Because I assumed at that point, God didn't want me for any nefarious purposes. And God didn't want me so that I could continue to experience suffering. And God, offering myself to God wasn't so that I could have all this awful stuff happen and say, well, it must be God's will. That would not have worked for me. But God, I offer myself to thee, and that's it, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Well, I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I thought it must be something good. It must be something positive, because I was already starting to like myself better. And then it said, relieve me of the bondage of self. And I thought, oh my goodness, what the heck does that mean? Bondage of self. Because I was so arrogant, I couldn't understand what those words, that bondage of self. And then one day it hit me. Because you see, as I continued to use this prayer, I got greater and greater understanding of what it meant. And bondage of self to me meant I was in bondage to the thought that someone actually wanted to hurt me, or that I would actually want to hurt another. I understand we get confused and we hurt each other, but that in truth, nobody wants to hurt another being. Nobody. And so then came that relieve me of the bondage of self. Why? That I may better do thy will. And I still wasn't on board with God's will because I didn't know what it meant, but I just knew it must be something good. And then it said, take away my difficulties. That one I understood. Oh, fine, my rent will be paid. That's what it meant to me. My rent is going to be paid. I don't have to worry anymore about my rent being paid. But it said, my difficulties.
That I may better do thy will.
No, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. I thought, victory over them, to those I would help. My life is to be one of service. Now, it didn't say my life was to be one of drudgery. It said of service. And so, and may I do thy will always. And then one day, and some of you have heard me tell this story before, this woman came into a late night room I was in with a fellowship. And she was erratic at best, emotionally. And she would scream and rant and rave about her day. But at the end of it, she would say, but I'm just going to keep coming back because I know God's will for me is to be happy, joyous, and free. Well, I was set free. Now I knew what God's will for me was. To be happy, joyous, and free. So now, God, I offer myself to thee to do with me as thou wilt. Be happy, joyous, and free. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will, that I may better be happy, joyous, and free. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. May I always be happy, joyous, and free. I could get on board with that prayer, and I could have a very intimate relationship with that God. That meant I would never be tested again. There was no such thing as a test from God. That's what that meant to me. There was not this old person somewhere testing me to see if I would still love it if I behaved. There was none of that. There was not someone somewhere who needed me to bow down and worship it. There wasn't any of that. There was relationship of love. Pure love for the sake of loving. That's what I was being offered through my understanding and this relationship. Some of you may already have this. Some of you may already have this. Some may be seeking. The doorknob is unlocked, isn't it?
Yeah, you
Sure.
want to lock it?
No. And so, to look at that and say, if you don't already have this relationship that I'm talking about, would you like to? Because it's yours the same as it's mine. Nobody's holding it from me. So once you have that relationship, then the personalities relationships get easier. Because we take things less personally. People's stuff, people's personalities, they become far less personal than they used to. You know, I became at complete peace with my childhood and began to heal my childhood because of this relationship with the invisible presence that I called God. And I could start to let some people off the hook. For the, you know, my dad became brother and sister rather than my parents who hurt me and let me down. And at one point I thought, oh, I wish I had done this sooner with them. I could have let them off the hook a lot sooner. It doesn't mean the stuff that happened didn't happen. What I came to understand was they didn't know it was me they were doing it to. They had no idea I existed. And I could begin to forgive that. It was disappointing, don't get me wrong. It would have been nice if my parents had known I was around. Because I was lovely. I was just adorable. And but they didn't know. I remember calling my dad left when I was very young, about 4 years old, and he just disappeared, changed his name, disappeared. And at 28, once in every so many years he would call from somewhere, we didn't know where. My older brothers had been in contact with him, but at 28, when I started some healing, I got his number from my brother, and I called him. I said, I have a question for you. Why was your life more important than me? And he told me stuff that just was foolish, really. And he blamed my mother, and I asked my mother about things, and she told me things, and I thought, well, they're both liars. I have to come to terms with, I might never know the truth. I have to become okay with that, because otherwise I will be insane. And I don't want to be the insane one anymore. I don't want to be the child who's insane, the adult child who's insane. I want to be Shawn, who is the beloved child of God. And I want to set my parents free to be beloved children of God. So, a few years later, my mother made her transition. And I was deep into healing in that third step prayer at that point. I was 3.5 years sober. And about a year later, I went to see a medium. I don't know if anybody approves or disapproves in church. I went. Great one out in Staten Island. And my mother came through, my father came through. Oh, that day was lovely. Oh, it was magical while I was there. And they both asked my forgiveness. But by the end of the day when I got home, I thought, you know, with all they put me through, they still want something else from me. I was a little resentful. And then I went to a healing friend of mine who does massage and Reiki, and I went to him and I was telling him the story, and I said, but you know, I'll forgive my dad when I get around to it, because I know forgiveness is for me, and so when I'm ready I will. And my wonderful friend Jim said, no, forgiveness is for him too. I said, what do you mean? And he said, my dad was dead several years at this point. He said, you don't want to leave him stuck because you have resentments. And I thought, no, I don't. I don't even know the man, and I don't want to leave him stuck. And so that day, I became willing. I prayed, and I said, God, I don't know what forgiveness is, but I know you do. And so I am willing to experience forgiveness with my dad. And every time I had a resentful thought, I once again said, God, Again, I clearly do not yet know what forgiveness is, but I'm willing to experience it, so show me how. And it was interesting to me that the word forgiveness experience came up rather than do it. And I thought, oh, so experience or forgiveness is going to be an experience, not an act. So, but still, every time it came up, and that summer I was at a retreat, a prosperity retreat with Unity of New York, and Edwin Gaines was there, my mentor, my prosperity mentor. She was a guest speaker, and at that retreat, Edwin invited me to a convention out in Scottsdale, Arizona, where Catherine Ponder was going to be speaking. And it was the INTA, the International New Thought Alliance. And Edwin said, Shawn, I'm going out there to speak at the INTA conference. And Catherine Ponder always throws a cocktail party. Would you like to go as my guest to that party? And I thought, these are icons in the Unity movement, in case you don't know. Catherine Ponder was the original prosperity teacher in Unity. She's got 1 million books and everything, and Edwin is one of her students, and this is a big deal to me. But I had no idea how I could go to this event. And I ran up to David and I said, David, Edwin just invited me to Phoenix to this thing, and I don't have any money to go. And he said, you're at a prosperity retreat, say yes. So I ran back down and I said, Edwin, I'll go. I said, what do I have to do? She said, well, you go online and you register here. So I did that, and I thought, how am I going to pay for plane fare? How am I going to rent a room? How am I going to rent a car? Spending money, all that, because I had some debt, and it just wasn't. Well, by the time I left the retreat, I had been tithed a few $100s. So there we go. There's the start. And David, while David did not give me any money, he did give me miles. And as fate would have it, it cost him fewer miles to fly me first class than coach. So I flew first class for the first time. And as fate would have it, I could rent a Lincoln for less money than the next size down car. So I had a Lincoln when I was out there. And I got a suite for $69 a night at the hotel. So all this was lovely, and I was introduced to a lot of people, and I got to hang out with Edwin. But more importantly, I have 2 half-brothers who live out there, who I'd never met. And I got their number, and I called or wrote, so I may have emailed the older one, and I said, I'm your brother, Shawn, and I know Mark and Kevin have met you, but I never have. Would you like to meet me? He said, can't wait. So I met these 2 men at this point, who I liked very much, and we look like brothers. We really look like brothers. And throughout the course of the week, hanging out, having dinners and things, I met their mother. I found out they didn't have a better life with my dad than I had without him. But they had put his ashes up at Chapel on the Rock in Sedona. So with all this, now I'm driving up to Sedona. Well, holy smokes. That was amazing. And I'm playing the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir on my CD. It's like they're all screaming at me. I'm having just the most spiritual trip I could ever imagine. And I get up to the Chapel on the Rock, and I'm sitting on the wall where they told me they had thrown his ashes several years ago. I guess you call it scattered, not thrown. And suddenly, I couldn't tell you what I was thinking at that point, but suddenly my dad became Jack Moninger instead of my father who left me. And I thought, oh, this is what forgiveness is. I don't need it to be different. I didn't need one thing to be different in the past with him. And I thought, oh, that's why it's called an experience and not a doing. My relationship with God deepened. I didn't need my dad to be anything other than he had been. Once again, I didn't need my childhood to be different than it had been. I still had great grief to experience, don't get me wrong. I still had a lot to experience from my childhood with the grief that was still left in the cells. But I didn't need my dad to come back and change anything. I didn't need my mother to come back, or my brothers to come back, or my teachers to come back and change anything. I was here and available. And that is because of my relationship with what I call God, that I seek to have continued to deepen and deepen and deepen. David's and my relationship never would have survived without individual willingness to deepen a relationship with a spiritual presence within us. I wouldn't have survived this working in this church. I would have had to have left years ago if I hadn't continued to deepen my relationship with Spirit and let Spirit to know that everybody has the God. There's no one without God here. And so I don't have to worry. Doesn't mean I don't, but I don't have to. You know, some days somebody doesn't like me. Some days. Not every day anymore. But some days people don't care for what I stand for, the way I look at them, the way I speak or don't speak to them. And I go within again. And I feel, okay, here I am. I'm willing to experience forgiveness, either from me or towards me. If I have offended someone, I'm willing to experience forgiveness for it. I am not willing to be guilty over it. I'm willing to open up to an expanded relationship with individuals. I have reached out to people over the years because it was time to heal. Whatever, at least I thought it was. And most people have been very receptive. And I have relationships with them. A couple of them have not been. One person in the street actually, I said, please don't say hello when you speak to me, when you see me, Shawn. And I thought, ooh, that's new. This is the person that brought me to Unity originally. Please don't speak to me when you see me. Now, this was a lot of years ago, and I assume the rule still holds. Because he's tough. He's a tough one. But to look at your relationship with God, are you at peace? Do you experience happy, joyous, and free frequently enough in your life to assure yourself that no matter what is going on, you are good? That no matter how your body feels today, you are good. No matter what relationships are going on today, you're still good. If you forgot to be kind, you are still good. If someone forgot to be kind to you, they are still good. The sky is good. The ground is good. It doesn't mean you like it all. We're talking about essence. Is your essence good? Is the essence of those around you inherently good, no matter how they are behaving in your mind? Because let's just remember one thing. No matter how someone is behaving in your mind, there's somebody else who thinks it's fantastic how somebody's behaving. We don't know. We don't understand. But is your essence good? Is the essence of your being good? Could you choose love today if you had to? You know, it's like, oh, the roads are slippery. I choose love. I don't know how much I'm going to have, how much money I'm going to have today. Oh, wait a minute, I choose love. My body hurts. Oh, wait a minute, I choose love. Look, why are they looking at me? That I choose love. Oh, I'm thinking these thoughts. I choose love. Oh, I ate too. I choose love. Oh, I'm only this tall. I choose love. I have curly hair, I have straight hair. I don't have any hair. I choose love. I choose love. I choose love. I choose love. So it is.